we can just have visitors join us as we move along. Welcome, everybody. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Claudia Casey. I am the principal at Tucker Creek Middle School. I've met a lot of parents and certainly missed out a bit on our sixth grade parents. Due to the circumstances, we did have a virtual meeting, so hopefully, many attended that. We wanted to offer an opportunity for our parents to become acquainted with the processes and procedures moving into Plan B. We encourage our families to visit our webpage. We post important information up there frequently, as well as our Facebook page as well. So, so please, if you haven't done so already, visit those two links in order to get updated information, especially as we are transitioning to Plan B, because we do update that information frequently. I'm going to go ahead to, so we're going to turn it over to Nurse Salter, who's going to talk a little bit about the screening and symptoms and some of the things that we've been doing already with staff to keep everybody safe. So Nurse Salter.
Hi, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Great, okay. So we have started our screening with our staff. Not a whole lot has changed. We're going to make sure that we're screening everyone coming into the building, whether that is staff, maintenance, and of course the students. So this is what that symptom list looks like. So before someone can continue on to school, we have to make sure that they haven't been experiencing any of these symptoms in the last 24 hours. You can see fever, chills, shortness of breath, difficulty breathing, a new cough, a headache, sore throat, fatigue, a stomach ache, vomiting, diarrhea, and new loss of sense of taste or smell. We're also going to be doing temperature checks with our forehead scanners, and we're looking for a temperature to be below 100 in Craven County. So we're going to talk more later about, how do we differentiate symptoms, but I just wanted to start with, this is the expectation before coming into the building.
Okay, now we're going to turn it over to our assistant principal, Mr. Paul Schwab.
Good evening, everyone. So first, I'd like to talk about our carpool expectations. And this line goes through our front traffic circle. If it's long enough, it will extend down the side of our school by our media center and cafeteria. But so we will begin letting students into the building at 7:45, and we ask that students do not exit their vehicle prior to that time so our staff can screen the students before exiting the car. And as long as temperature is below 100 and student has no symptoms, they will be allowed to transition while practicing social distancing into the school building straight to their homeroom. If a student answers yes to a screening question or has a temperature above 100, the entire car should go home and make arrangements to discuss next steps with the school nurse. Walkers, upon arrival, they'll come in by our old SRO office. A lot of our 7th and 8th graders are familiar with this store, and we will have signage up the first week of school to help students know where to walk to. But we will have a staff member at that door greeting our walkers and again taking temperatures and asking the COVID screening questions. If students answer yes to any of them or they have a temperature above 100 degrees, a staff member will escort them to the COVID sick room and parents will be notified. Bus riders, everyone needs to be wearing their masks at all times. Bus drivers will take the temperature of all the students before allowing them onto the bus, bus drivers will also be asking the COVID screening questions. And just like with carpool and walkers, as long as temperatures are below 100 and students have no symptoms, they will be allowed to board the bus and take their assigned seat. Bus information can be found at Here Comes the Bus app. And once you download that app on your phone, you will need your parent name, the school district code, which is 81462. I'll say that one more time. The school district code is 81462. And then your email address and your child's first and last name, along with their student ID number. And that information, that ID number is what they use for Power School to log in, so they should know what their ID number is. Transportation Department is asking for some grace with the arrival of the bus, and they're asking students to be at the stop 20 minutes before their scheduled time and at least 15 minutes after, before calling with any concerns about the bus. But if you have the Here Comes the Bus app, it will give you a realistic time daily of when that bus is going to come. So if it's impeded by traffic, or if a couple students don't come to school that day and the bus is ahead of schedule, if you have that app and you're following it, it will let you know daily what time that bus is going to come. On Monday, it might be 7:10. On Tuesday, it might be 6:55 because some students didn't ride and it was able to push forward. They're hoping to have the times for the arrival of the bus settled by the first 2 weeks of school. But again, whether students are riding or not will impact the quickness of the bus arriving to their next stop, especially when, if there isn't a child riding at a certain stop, they don't have to ask the questions, they don't have to give the temperature, they can just move forward. So it's going to really impact the time. So it's important that everyone has the Here Comes the Bus app, and the school district code is 81462. I also have on this slide a district transportation protocol video and preparing to ride the bus information on a PDF. And you'll be able to access this when we post this presentation onto our school website tomorrow morning. Mealtimes. So breakfast and lunch are going to be served in the homeroom classrooms. And to decrease the amount of hands touching the food items, teachers will sanitize their hands and then distribute the meals to the assigned student desks. Students will be given the opportunity to wash or sanitize their hands before eating, and masks must be worn before starting and after students finish eating. Students will be able to wipe their area down after eating with a paper towel. And during homeroom, students in school will complete a separate Google form if they desire a school lunch, which must be completed by 9 a.m. Child nutrition will begin delivering lunches to the classrooms at 11:15. And to help with controlling the germs and everything that come in and out of the building, we're asking parents not to deliver lunch from outside sources such as McDonald's or Wendy's during the middle of the day, and that students may not use the microwaves in the building. So please pack lunches appropriately and reflecting those processes.
Also, please be aware that breakfast and lunch is free through December 31st, and it may be extended beyond that, but we do know for certain that it will be extended through December 31st. Before we go into the next slide, which talks about the the school day routine, I did want to just remind you that we do have a video that our staff created to acquaint our students with these processes as well. So that is posted on our Facebook page as well as our webpage. Also, we just, for those parents who requested any kind of change, whether it be a change from one day to another day of the week, whether it was a change from Craven Live to Plan B or Plan B to Craven Live, whichever the case may be. Those changes were recently shared with us. In fact, they were finalized today, so we will be making phone calls tomorrow to notify parents. So just wanted to be sure that I shared that with you. Okay, so students arriving at homeroom. Every morning, the student's temperature is going to be taken by the homeroom teacher. And this is the only time that a temperature is actually going to be recorded during the day, unless there's a reason to believe that there was a temperature at some point. So temperature, as long as the temperature is below 100, student has no symptoms, they will proceed to class. But the one time they're going to be recording it is at that morning check. If a student has symptoms or has a temperature of 100 or above, the nurse is going to be contacted and a staff member will escort the student to what we've termed the sick room to follow the quarantine process. And then that goes to our nurse, Ms. Salter, and she will start that process of contacting the parent. Please remember that we consider the direct contact of a person who is positive with COVID is considered less than 6 feet apart for more than 15 minutes, whether they're wearing a mask or no mask. And these are the guidelines that are set by the CDC. I don't know if Nurse Salter, if you want to chime in on that at all.
I think that sounds great. There'll be more information at the back of the presentation too on that.
Okay. All right, so classroom expectations, students will need their own supplies. We will not be permitting sharing at this time. Our teachers do have pencils that we provided for students who don't have pencils. We also have some supplies for students who do not have supplies. As far as requests for specific things, those can be shared with the students when they arrive, but they really should have everything that they need in the classroom. Primarily, most of the work is going to be done on the computer or hands-on with supplies that are specifically just for that student. So there's no sharing involved. So if there's something specific, maybe they're working on a project or something, and each student needs something, those expectations will be communicated to our parents. But we are really just going to try to work with what everybody has to certainly to start our face-to-face. Students are not going to be allowed to move their desks, and they will be required to maintain that social distancing in the classroom, also while wearing a mask. We measured out that 6 feet distance between desks, so obviously there are not quite as many desks like we normally would have in a classroom, and so we ask that they just remain there. Students will have an assigned desk when they come in for their assigned day, and for that classroom, the teachers are actually, for the most part, going to be moving from class to class, with the exception of some of our 8th grade students, because they do divide into our Math 8 and our Math 1, and then we also have our exploratory classes as well. So there's going to be, but very minimal moving around. It's going to be, for the most part, the teachers will be moving to the classrooms. Students are responsible for maintaining their work area and then removing all their personal items at the end of the day. Hand sanitizers. We have hand sanitizer dispensers in every classroom, and they're located throughout the school building as well. Students are going to be encouraged to wash their hands prior to meals and after meals and regularly throughout the school day. And of course, their routine and scheduled restroom breaks and mask breaks as well. Students will have frequent mask breaks, and we'll go into that in a little bit. And teachers will be sanitizing the classroom daily. with the Wednesdays being the deep sanitizing by our custodial crew. Our grade levels have created a schedule for restroom breaks to ensure that social distancing and the sanitation of facilities can be completed in a consistent manner. On nice weather days, the classes will utilize the exterior doors to get outside and have their mask breaks, and also come out to one of the restrooms. During this time, again, students are going to be practicing social distancing, but they will be able to remove their masks temporarily. When the weather is not cooperative, then they will be allowed to come out to the front of the building where we have that covered area where they can have their mask breaks there. Grade levels are going to be restricted to only use their designated bathrooms. We've also asked that students bring water bottles to school. We will have some water breaks as well throughout the day. And for students who forget their water bottles, we've provided our teachers with some cups so that they can use the water filling stations to fill up either their water bottle or their cups throughout the day. Okay, Ms. Salter.
There's going to be a midday screening in addition to that morning screening when you enter the door. This is to make sure we're catching anything that might have developed over the morning, and that we're keeping the students who might be exposed to that safe. So it'll just be a quick temp check in their classrooms during lunchtime by their teachers. And then, of course, if any temperature or symptom has developed, then they'll be escorted to the sick room where I'd start the quarantine process, including contacting the parent.
Transitions during the day. So to minimize transitions, we are limiting them. Obviously, as I mentioned, the teachers will be moving from classroom to classroom for the most part, with a few exceptions. A schedule has been created for these transition times to include movement of students through the exterior doors whenever possible. We're fortunate in that we do have each classroom equipped with exterior doors so they can go outside through that way whenever possible. Exploratory teachers will meet the students and then return them to their designated classrooms after exploratory. Students will only be assigned, they've only been assigned to one exploratory class. So typically when we're doing face-to-face, during a regular school year, our students have 2 exploratories, but this for each semester they just have 1. So they have 5 classes in most cases. Visitors, unfortunately, visitors will have very limited access to the school building, as they have since really since COVID-19 developed, and we closed to face-to-face instruction. Parents and guardians who do come, who say need to pick up a child early, are still expected to follow the checkout procedure. So we do have the Raptor security system. We would meet you at the door. Miss Vicki, in most cases, would meet you at the door and obtain a valid driver's license, which would be put through the Raptor security system, and then your child will be called to meet you at the front, and that's how that process will work. And then we have dismissal, and that, I believe, is Mr. Schwab. I think you're on mute, Mr. Schwab.
I was, sorry about that. So we know dismissal can be a little bit chaotic, and even more so now that we have to follow COVID expectations. So all students are going to be dismissed from the homeroom, and we're going to have 5 cones, just like in the morning time during Carpool. We'll have those same 5 cones with staff members at each, greeting the cards as they come up. So we ask that parents pull up to each of those cones. And the first week we're going to work on creating placards. If you had your child go through an elementary school in Craven County, you're probably very familiar with something very similar, and it'll have your child's name on it and their grade level, and that way we can kind of see who's coming. If it's in your front passenger side window, let our front office know and call your child down, so by the time you get to the cone, they'll be there, and it'll help expedite the dismissal for Carpool. Walkers are going to be able to exit out the classroom back door at the direction of their teacher. Students are to walk towards their home and off the school property as quickly as possible. And while they do so, we ask that they continue to maintain social distancing, not just while on school property, but when they enter their neighborhood and into the community. Because it is a safety concern if students are observed loitering around school property, disciplinary action will take place. Bus dismissal will be out our rear doors like last year, and we will have staff members there to observe that students continue to maintain social distancing and wear their masks. Buses will be announced through our intercom system, and students will be dismissed from their homerooms. And we will have staff members throughout the building helping to ensure that social distancing and mask wearing is occurring throughout the process.
And please know that, you know, these are processes that we thought through carefully, but there may be adjustments that we have to make, like we've done from the beginning of this year and the end of last year. So kind of seeing what's working and if we need to make adjustments, but we felt that we certainly needed to have some clear-cut expectations and procedures in order to have that structure for kids and keep everybody safe. Nurse Salter, you're up.
Yes. Okay, so this is where it gets a little bit complicated. We have very specific policy coming down from the county and above that from the state and of course the CDC. But this is our flow chart for deciding what happens next when someone is positive for one of these screening questions. So whether it's a symptom that we listed in the beginning that you can see up there, the fever, chills, shortness of breath, headache, or there's been an exposure, as in the student has been around someone who is confirmed positive for COVID-19, or someone in their household is quarantining for COVID. So we have our basic, no flags. You say no to all of these symptoms. Your temperature is below 100. You get to move on with your school day. Next is exposure, no symptoms. So this is a 14 days since time of exposure. So at this point is when contact really increases with me. I'm going to walk the student and the parent through these next steps and in partnership with the health department. So this doesn't have to be memorized. I just wanted to put it out here so you guys are aware ahead of time before this happens, because we'll see this, whether it's someone close to you or yourself. You might be quarantined, might have to be sent to the doctor to make sure quarantine isn't necessary. So there's this next little bubble says diagnosis with no symptoms, and what this can be is that this one is the case where you went and had a COVID test and were positive. I'm sorry. I started to think of more than likely we'll have a scenario with at least one symptom, as you see on the next, where you might go to the doctor and receive an alternate diagnosis. So it's not COVID, but we still have to address these symptoms, and we're going to want clear documentation that we're keeping everyone safe from any possible COVID cases. So where we can really plan ahead for this alternate diagnosis is if your child has a chronic condition like allergies or migraine headaches that you know would pop positive for one of our screening symptom questions, then go ahead and get that documentation ready to have on file so we can be ahead of it and they miss the least amount of school as possible. Now, if they do have a symptom, they're sent home, we do have the option for virtual learning, and that would be the expectation. And with this symptom popping up, we'll walk through, again, the communication with me, walk through what to do next. Do we go to the doctor? Do we get tested? And how long does that mean we're out of the building? So you can read here. I'll be here to take questions at the end, but I think if we go to the next slide, I went into a little more about our notification process. So a lot of the questions coming from families, of course, is how do we know when my child has been exposed from someone at school possibly? So if your child is positive, please notify me immediately. That way I can begin contact tracing. And if they have been around anyone for less than 6 feet, at less than 6 feet for more than 15 minutes, that would be considered a contact and or this exposure, which I would then contact people to get tested, to be quarantined, and kind of just continue down that flow chart that you saw. After I contact the people who have been directly exposed, which should be at a minimum since we are keeping the 6 feet throughout the school day, Ms. Casey will send an email or a Blackboard notification to all staff and families so that so everyone knows that there was a positive in the building. This wouldn't include a name or even a classroom because we're going to keep health information private through this entire season that we're in. That doesn't get to go away because of COVID, but you will be notified if you're exposed. Custodial staff will complete a deep sanitation of the classroom and areas of contact after that child was sent home. And also the district will send out a notification of a positive case and update the district dashboard. So this is actually already something that's currently up and running because we have staff in the building. So you can see the little picture up in the corner that is a little screenshot of what the dashboard looks like. So you can get to this on Craven County Schools website, and it'll tell you number of positive cases that have occurred within the county. So I jumped ahead because I knew this was going to be on people's mind that we're going to want to stay ahead of symptoms that are not COVID. I think there's a saying going around like, can you be sick from, can you be normal sick, or is it just COVID? Well, the county has a pretty strong stance on erring on the side of caution that if we cannot absolutely rule out that it's not COVID, we're going to want the people to stay home. Because the fact is COVID can look like other things, and we don't want to take that risk with people's health. So if there's some condition, just be on top of that with communication with me and doctor's note. You can see that quote down there: without a doctor's note or a negative test, positive symptoms will be assumed to be COVID. And that link there, once this presentation is posted, will take you to a more detailed letter that was posted by our lead nurse for the county that kind of goes into more expectations about COVID specifically when someone's sick.
Okay, with the transition to Plan B, the challenge for us is going to be having children face-to-face and also a virtual audience, because at this time under Plan B, students will just be attending one day, and then the other 3 days they will be virtually or remotely attending class. So it does pose a challenge for our teachers. We have discussed this in our school improvement team meetings. And we also met with our colleagues from other schools to come up with some strategies as to how to address instruction to make sure it was engaging, and that we had full participation of our students. So what we've settled upon is what we call the flipped classroom. And in many of our classes currently, they're utilizing a flipped classroom model. In that case, what happens is that the kids convene together on Zoom, which is typically that synchronous time. But once we start with kids tuning in virtually, and then also our face-to-face students, students will be asked to do some tasks when they meet for Zoom that will prepare them for their synchronous time. So we're actually flipping that time from the synchronous time to asynchronous. So all of the students will be able to meet at Zoom initially during their Zoom meetings, and then expectations will be conveyed to them in order to prepare them for the synchronous portion of the lesson. So that is where the application of skills will take place. Again, teachers will be moving from class to class whenever possible. And we hope that this model is going to really increase participation and also engagement at the same time. Exploratory classes, as we mentioned, there's one per semester. So upon returning from Christmas break, students will be able to, we'll have a new exploratory class. We just received some further guidance regarding chorus and band. I'm gonna discuss that in just a moment. For PE, outdoors whenever possible. And when in the gym, having groups distanced apart again to maintain the social distancing requirements. For chorus, singing can occur indoor with masks when class occupancy is at 50% or less. Should not exceed 30 minutes due to the buildup of aerosol spray. We will be getting a rolling plexiglass shield, and the Craven County Schools did create a return to chorus plan that includes protocols to be followed. So this was just very recently released, and so we will be sharing additional information as we move forward. Band as well, those guidelines were just released as well. Outside for now until all safety equipment is in place. And when we talk about safety equipment, we're talking about music masks, which are designed specifically for playing instruments, bell covers, air scrubbers, and filters. And again, Craven County Schools did create a return to band protocol that we will be following. For art, STEM, CTE, students will not share supplies. So anything that they would be using would be individually packaged just for each student. And again, they'll be spaced out in classrooms, and desks will be wiped down before and after each student. Extracurricular, that is one of the best things about middle school. We did start a virtual chess club. That has been spearheaded by our 7th grade social studies teacher, Mr. Earlitz. We are also getting ready to start student council, National Junior Honor Society, and athletics. We are awaiting on further guidelines for middle school athletics, but we do expect that we'll get that rolling shortly as well. Again, keep in mind that the things, we're learning new information every day. And so as we receive that information, we'll certainly share that with parents. Again, focusing on, certainly Sunday messages that I send out weekly, and then also our webpage and our Facebook page. That is all that I have, and now I think we'd like to open the floor to some questions. I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and if we have any questions, just feel free to unmute yourselves, and we can address those questions.
I would like to share one more thing about transportation that I forgot to mention, but County Transportation Office did announce that they will not be approving alternate bus stops or additional stop requests at this time. But once they, the dust has settled a little bit, they will hopefully reach out to myself, the bus supervisor for Tucker Creek, and then we'll post something on our social media to let you know that they are now accepting alternate stops or additional stop requests.
Anybody have any questions?
Hi, I have a question.
Sure.
I was just curious when we'll find out what day our kid will go to school, or like which group they're in.
Okay, so you weren't notified by the district regarding that?
I don't think so.
Okay, if you can call the front office, and Miss Vicky will have a spreadsheet with those days. What I alluded to earlier was just the requests. I know that they had opened the opportunity for parents to request changes. In some cases, if they had children going to Craven Live and wanted to transition to a Plan B or vice versa, or just simply needed a change in the day. Though that information we just recently finalized today. So those will be phone calls that we're going to be making out for those exclusively. But if you were never notified to begin with, then certainly give Vicki a call and she will have that information. She can look up your student's name.
Perfect, thank you. And do they need to bring in their iPads on the day that they're coming to school?
Yes, absolutely. Bring the iPads. And that's really a great point. And I probably need to include that in Sunday's message.
Mm-hmm. All right.
And again, we're trying to minimize the use of paper and distribution of paper as well. There will be occasion, certainly, where they may be doing something, especially with math. But we really want to utilize that face-to-face time with them as much as possible for doing either demonstrations or interactive things where we keep our distance, but we can get them engaged in a different way, obviously, than from being at home.
Awesome. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Mr. Shislak has their hand up. Go ahead.